The city, a sprawling beast of concrete and glass, hummed with a rhythm Evelyn Reed knew by heart. It was a symphony of distant sirens, the rumble of subway trains beneath the asphalt, and the ceaseless murmur of human activity. Yet, within her meticulously curated apartment, perched on the 6th floor of a nondescript building, a profound silence reigned. It was a silence she actively cultivated, a fortress against the unpredictable chaos of her profession. Every object had its designated place books, aligned by height on the polished shelves. Throw pillows plumped to perfection on the sofa, and a single, unblemished orchid blooming on the windowsill, its delicate petals a stark contrast to the rigid order around it. At precisely 6:30 p.m., as the last vestiges of daylight bled from the sky, Evelyn began her nightly ritual. She moved with a practiced economy of motion, each step deliberate, each gesture precise. From the refrigerator, she retrieved a pre-portioned container of salmon and steamed asparagus, the colors vibrant against the stark white of the ceramic plate. The microwave whirred softly, a brief interruption to the quiet. She sat at her small, round dining table, a solitary figure illuminated by the soft glow of a minimalist overhead lamp. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the refrigerator, a distant, almost imperceptible thrum of the building's infrastructure, and the gentle clink of her fork against the ceramic. There was no television murmuring in the background, no music playing, no distant voices from a roommate or a partner. Just Evelyn, the measured cadence of her chewing, and the pervasive stillness. Her gaze was steady, focused on the food, yet her mind, ever alert, seemed to hover just above the present moment, analyzing, assessing, always a step ahead. This wasn't just dinner, it was fuel, a calculated necessity to maintain the sharp edge required for her work. The flavors were clean, precise, much like her approach to life. Each bite was a testament to her self-discipline, a silent affirmation of control in a world that so often defied it. Evelyn was a detective, and her dedication to the law was not merely a career, it was an unwavering creed. The badges, the commendations, the long hours spent sifting through evidence and chasing leads, these were not sacrifices but extensions of her being. Her work filled the void that might otherwise have been occupied by personal connections, by the messy, unpredictable emotions of human relationships. She was married to the job, bound by an invisible vow to uphold justice, to bring order to the chaos, and to protect the innocent. This drive was not born of idealism alone, but from a deeper, almost rigid sense of duty, a moral compass set firmly north, guiding her through the murky waters of crime. She thrived in the structured environment of the precinct, where rules were clear and consequences, however elusive, eventually followed. One crisp Saturday afternoon, a rare break in her relentless schedule, Evelyn found herself far from the sterile precision of her office. She was off duty, dressed in simple jeans and a dark hoodie, blending seamlessly into the urban landscape. She had just finished a session at her secluded boxing gym, the one she frequented in a gritty, industrial part of town, far from the polished downtown streets. The air still vibrated with the phantom echo of her punches against the heavy bag. As she walked down a narrow alleyway, shortcutting towards a quieter street, a sudden commotion pierced the usual urban hum. Ahead, near the mouth of the alley, a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, clutched a small handbag tightly to her chest. Standing over her were two figures, both larger, coarser, their faces obscured by the shadows of their hoodies. One of them, a bulky man with a snarl on his face, roughly yanked at the bag, while the other, thinner but equally menacing, blocked the woman's escape. The young woman cried out, a small, choked sound of terror and helplessness. Most people would have hurried past, averted their gaze, or perhaps pulled out a phone to dial 911 hoping someone else would intervene. But Evelyn Reed was not most people. Her detective's mind, honed by years of training, instantly assessed the situation. Two aggressors, one victim, no visible weapons, but a clear intent to harm. Her police-issued firearm was secured in her ankle holster, but a public alleyway, a simple mugging, called for discretion and de-escalation, not a show of force. This was not a situation where rules of engagement were debated. It was a pure, visceral call to protect. Without breaking stride, Evelyn's eyes scanned her surroundings. A discarded broom handle leaning against a dumpster, a loose brick in the crumbling wall, distractions. Instead, she chose a simpler, more direct approach. Her voice, calm and steady, sliced through the tense air, carrying the subtle authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Everything okay here?" she called out, her tone neutral, almost conversational, yet it carried an unmistakable undertone of steel. The two muggers froze, startled by the unexpected voice. They turned, their eyes narrowed, trying to gauge the threat. Evelyn stood with her hands casually in her pockets, her posture relaxed, betraying nothing of the coiled tension within her muscles. She didn't announce herself as a police officer. She didn't need to. Her presence alone, the quiet confidence she exuded, was enough to disrupt their rhythm. The bulky man, the leader, snarled again. "Mind your business, lady. This ain't got nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me when I see someone in distress," Evelyn replied, her voice still even, but her gaze fixed on his eyes. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, a subtle shift in the balance of power. "Let her go. And the bag. It's not worth the trouble you're about to get yourselves into." The man hesitated, caught off guard by her composure. He glanced at his accomplice, who looked equally bewildered. They were used to easy targets, not individuals who stood their ground with such quiet authority. Evelyn noticed his slight shift in weight, the way his fingers tightened on the bag. She knew fear, but she didn't show it. The smaller man, emboldened by the leader's hesitation, took a step towards Evelyn. "Or what? Lady, what are you gonna do?" In a fluid motion, almost too fast to follow. Evelyn shifted her weight, dropping into a low, defensive stance. Her right hand darted out, not to strike, but to deftly hook the arm of the bulky man who still held the victim's bag. She applied just enough pressure to his wrist, a precise tactical maneuver she'd learned in her academy training, forcing him to release his grip with a yelp of surprise. The handbag, freed, fell to the ground beside the terrified young woman. As he recoiled, Evelyn spun, her left leg sweeping low, not to trip him, but to disrupt his balance, sending him stumbling back against the alley wall. It was all about control, about disarming without causing undue harm. A dance of practiced precision. The thinner man, seeing his partner falter, hesitated for a crucial second. "This is your last chance," Evelyn stated, her voice now colder, sharper, the steel beneath the velvet finally showing. Her eyes, usually calm, now held an unyielding glint. "Walk away, now, or face the consequences." The two muggers, clearly outmatched and rattled by her unexpected prowess, exchanged a panicked glance. This wasn't worth it. They turned tail and bolted, disappearing into the maze of urban streets, leaving only the lingering scent of fear and cheap cologne. Evelyn watched them go for a moment, then turned her attention to the young woman, who was still trembling, her eyes wide with shock. The handbag lay on the grimy asphalt, its contents spilling slightly. "Are you all right?" Evelyn asked, her voice softening immediately. She knelt down, retrieving the bag and handing it back to its owner. The young woman, still breathing heavily, clutched the bag to her chest. "Yes, I think so." "Oh my God, thank you. You were amazing." "Who are you?" Evelyn offered a small, reassuring smile, a rare glimpse of warmth on her usually stoic face. "Just someone who happened to be passing by. Get somewhere safe, and maybe consider self-defense classes." She didn't wait for further thanks, nor did she reveal her identity. Her duty was done. She simply helped the young woman to her feet and, with a brief nod, continued her walk, leaving the grateful victim to process the extraordinary intervention. The warmth of the setting sun touched her face, but a deeper satisfaction bloomed within her, the quiet triumph of justice served, even in the smallest of moments. This anonymous act of heroism was not for accolades, but for the inherent call of her own moral code. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of her apartment, the city lights blurred outside her window, a shimmering tapestry of distant lives. Evelyn had showered, shedding the day's grime and the lingering tension of the alleyway encounter. She stood before her full-length mirror, a tall, slender figure in a plain white t-shirt and dark sweatpants. Her auburn hair, usually pulled back in a severe bun, was now damp and fell loosely around her shoulders, framing a face that was strikingly beautiful in its stark angles and intelligent eyes. She lifted her right hand, clenching and unclenching her fist. The subtle ache in her knuckles was a familiar companion, a testament to her hours spent at the boxing gym. This was her secret, the seed of mystery that few knew about. The gym itself was a relic, tucked away behind an abandoned warehouse in the city's industrial fringe, its air thick with the scent of old leather, sweat, and liniment. There, away from the sterile environment of law enforcement, Evelyn shed her detective persona and embraced a raw, primal physicality. She practiced alone, typically in the quiet hours when the gym was deserted, the rhythmic thud of her gloved fists against the heavy bag echoing in the vast, empty space. Her form was impeccable, her punches precise, each one thrown with a controlled ferocity that belied her calm demeanor. It wasn't about aggression for her, it was about discipline, about channeling a deeper intensity, a contained drive that pulsed beneath her composed exterior. Each jab, each hook, each uppercut was a meticulous act of release, a silent meditation. This wasn't merely exercise. It was a crucible where she forged her resilience, sharpened her reflexes, and found an outlet for the unarticulated pressures of her life. The sweat that poured from her was not just physical exertion, it was the residue of emotions held in check, of a past that had left its indelible mark, driving her relentless pursuit of order and justice. The sheer, almost obsessive nature of her practice hinted at a personal motivation, a private battle fought in the solitude of the gym that fueled her dedication to law enforcement beyond just a career choice. It was here, in the raw, unpolished environment, that she truly felt unburdened, truly herself. As she looked at her reflection, a flicker of something unfulfilled danced in her eyes. It was a fleeting shadow of a loneliness she rarely acknowledged, a quiet yearning for a connection that her disciplined life seemed to preclude. The success she achieved in her career, the respect she commanded, offered a profound sense of accomplishment, but they didn't quite fill the quiet corners of her existence. She ran her fingers over a small, faint scar just above her left eyebrow, a memento from a forgotten sparring session, or perhaps something deeper. A half smile, tinged with a hint of melancholy, touched her lips before fading. With a soft sigh, Evelyn turned away from the mirror. The city hummed outside, its ceaseless energy a counterpoint to her inner stillness. She walked to her impeccably organized desk, picked up her planner, and began to review her schedule for the upcoming week, her mind already shifting back to the precise, predictable rhythm of her professional life. It was a mechanism, a way to keep a lid on that bubbling inner world, to maintain the control that defined her. The orchid on the windowsill seemed to stand guard over her, a silent witness to her solitary existence, a testament to her beautiful, but isolated, strength. The quiet before the storm. The fluorescent lights of the precinct hummed with a different kind of energy that Monday morning. It wasn't the usual low thrum of daily operations, but a charged, anxious buzz that permeated every desk, every conversation. Evelyn felt it as soon as she stepped through the glass doors, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. She saw Captain Davies, her stern but fair superior, in a hushed, intense conversation with two grim-faced federal agents. The air was thick with the weight of something significant, something that threatened to disrupt the carefully maintained order of her world. Her personal catalyst arrived in the form of a manila folder, thick and heavy, placed unceremoniously on her desk. Inside, the word "Phantom" was emblazoned across the top of a preliminary report in bold, red letters. Evelyn's breath hitched, a subtle reaction no one else noticed. She had heard the whispers, the elusive legends, of this particular criminal, the Phantom, a notorious thief, Julian Vance, who moved through the digital and physical landscapes like smoke, leaving behind a trail of audacious high-tech heists. His signature was precise, non-violent, and frustratingly traceless. He was a ghost in the machine. And now, he was her case. The immediate case that landed on her desk was a gut punch to Evelyn's core values. The Phantom had targeted the city's Children's Aid Fund, a vital public service that provided medical care and educational programs for underprivileged youth. Billions of dollars, earmarked for a new wing of the city's children's hospital, had vanished from encrypted accounts without a trace. The public outcry was immediate and furious. News channels ran endless segments on the theft, showing images of sick children and desperate parents. The mayor's office was in an uproar, demanding swift action. The pressure on the police department, and on Evelyn personally as the lead detective on the case, was immense, a suffocating weight that settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just a robbery, it was an attack on the most vulnerable, a direct affront to everything she believed in. As Evelyn delved into the minutiae of the Phantom's methods, poring over encrypted logs and deciphering complex digital footprints, a strange fascination began to bloom within her. His precision was chilling, yet undeniably elegant. He bypassed layers of state-of-the-art security systems, leaving behind no physical evidence, no forced entries, no broken circuits. His digital fingerprints were untraceable, each step a meticulously planned ballet of code and timing. What truly intrigued her, however, was his pattern. The Children's Aid Fund, while devastating, fit a pattern. Previous targets had included a corrupt real estate magnate who built luxury condos on public parkland, a pharmaceutical company caught price-gouging life-saving medication, and a shell corporation linked to illegal arms dealing. The Phantom didn't just steal, he seemed to expose, to highlight the morally bankrupt underbelly of the city's elite. "He's not just a thief," she muttered to Sergeant Lena Hansen one late night in the precinct, the only colleague she trusted enough to voice her nascent, unorthodox thoughts. Lena, a pragmatic woman with a sharp wit and even sharper eyes, simply grunted, sipping her lukewarm coffee. "He's a ghost, Evelyn, and ghosts don't have moral codes. They just take..." But Evelyn knew better. She saw the intricate, almost artistic flair in his heists, the subtle messages left behind, not to taunt, but to point towards larger injustices. This unconventional moral code of a criminal, a thief who acted like an avenging angel, deeply intrigued her. It challenged the black and white perception of justice she had held so rigidly. She found herself admiring his intellect, his agility, even his daring, even as she dedicated every waking hour to hunting him down. This internal struggle, the gnawing conflict between her sworn duty to uphold the law and her growing intrigue with Julian Vance's sophisticated, albeit criminal, methods, began to fray the edges of her rigid adherence to established norms. She found herself questioning the very nature of justice, wondering if sometimes the law itself was blind to deeper wrongs. The investigation led Evelyn down a rabbit hole of digital breadcrumbs and whispered intelligence, culminating in a high-stakes stakeout at a seemingly impenetrable tech vault located in the city's most secure financial district. This was it, the rumored next target, a digital repository of corporate secrets belonging to a shadowy conglomerate, Omnicorp, with whispered ties to illicit dealings. Evelyn had a tip, an unverified rumor from a disgraced hacker, that the Phantom was planning to exploit a newly discovered vulnerability in Omnicorp's system. The night was cold and damp, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, Evelyn, clad in dark tactical gear, lay prone on a rooftop across the street, her binoculars pressed to her eyes, scanning the monolithic structure of the vault. Her heart pounded a steady rhythm against her ribs, a counterpoint to the quiet hum of the night. She saw him. A fleeting shadow. A flicker of movement across the reinforced glass facade, impossibly high up. Julian Vance. The Phantom. The pursuit was a silent, high-stakes cat-and-mouse game played out across the labyrinthine security systems of the vault. Evelyn moved with the precision of a hunter, navigating the complex layout, bypassing laser grids and motion sensors, her every step a calculated maneuver. But Julian was always a step ahead. He wasn't just bypassing the systems, he was manipulating them, turning them against themselves. She watched in awe as he disabled a pressure plate here, rerouted a camera feed there, all with an uncanny agility that bordered on supernatural. He moved through the vault like a whisper, a fluid blur of motion that defied gravity and logic. She finally cornered him in a dimly lit server room, the hum of the machines a low drone in the background. Her pistol was drawn, aimed steady at his chest. "Freeze. Phantom," she commanded, her voice firm, unwavering. Julian, caught off guard, spun around, his face obscured by a dark hood. But his eyes, even in the dim light, held a startling intensity, a mixture of intelligence and something akin to sorrow. He made no aggressive moves. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't attempt to attack her. Instead, he simply looked at her, a silent challenge in his gaze. Then, with an almost imperceptible shift, he moved, not towards her, but upwards, leaping onto a rack of servers, then to an overhead conduit, scaling the wall with impossible ease. He outmaneuvered her with incredible agility, a deep, intuitive understanding of the environment, vanishing into the ventilation shafts before she could react. He left her physically unharmed, but profoundly challenged, his escape a masterstroke of evasion. Before he disappeared completely, a small metallic object clinked on the floor beside Evelyn. She lowered her pistol, her eyes scanning the empty space where he had been. It was a data stick, small and unassuming, clearly intended for her. Her gloved fingers picked it up, a strange warmth radiating from the cold metal. Later, back at the precinct, her hands still trembling slightly, she inserted the stick into a secure terminal. It contained no incriminating evidence, no taunts, only a single encrypted file. When decrypted, it revealed an obscure philosophical quote related to justice from an ancient philosopher, a line that resonated deeply with her own internal conflict. And then, a series of seemingly random numbers and coordinates, a clue that suggested his next target, subtly hinting at a deeper game at play. This personal interaction, this direct intellectual duel, transformed the pursuit from a mere case into something far more intimate and compelling. It was a challenge to her intellect, to her sense of self. Julian Vance wasn't just a criminal, he was an enigma, a mirror reflecting her own unspoken questions about justice and morality. The data stick was a gauntlet thrown, and Evelyn, against all logic, found herself compelled to pick it up. There was no turning back. The chase had become personal, and the boundaries of her duty were about to be irrevocably blurred. The encrypted clue from Julian's data stick had led Evelyn to a series of seemingly random coordinates and a peculiar, almost poetic reference to the heart of stolen light. After days of relentless investigation, cross-referencing obscure philosophical texts with recent corporate financial disclosures, Evelyn and Lena had finally pinpointed the target Omnicorp's highly classified data center. This sprawling, windowless fortress of reinforced concrete and humming servers was rumored to house not just corporate data, but the digital backbone of a vast, illicit network. Evelyn felt a shiver of anticipation, a blend of professional thrill and the unsettling pull of her growing intrigue with Julian Vance. The night air was thick with the scent of ozone, and the distant city lights blurred into a haze as Evelyn's team, comprised of a dozen elite tactical officers, surrounded the Omnicorp data center. Inside, Julian Vance moved with an almost ethereal grace. He wasn't just a thief. He was a dancer of data, a phantom waltzing through firewalls and laser grids. His fingers, long and agile, flew across a custom-built console, bypassing Omnicorp's cutting-edge security systems with frightening ease. He wasn't aiming for financial gain this time, Evelyn knew, with a certainty that unnerved her, that he was after something else entirely: information, incriminating data. As Evelyn's team breached the outer perimeter, a silent alarm registered Julian's presence within. The building's internal defenses locked down, a complex labyrinth of reinforced doors, retinal scanners, and motion-sensitive tripwires. Evelyn, leading the charge, navigated the sterile white corridors with the efficiency of a predator. Her senses heightened. She knew Julian was close. She could almost feel his presence, a faint static charge in the air. She found him in a central server farm, a cavernous space filled with the cool hum of massive machines. He was downloading data, a frantic dance of green lines flowing across his portable console. His hooded figure, illuminated by the glow of the server racks, seemed to glow with an almost spiritual intensity. "Freeze." "Phantom," Evelyn commanded, her voice echoing in the vast space. Her pistol was raised, steady, pointed at his back. Julian spun, his movements fluid and precise. His face was still partially obscured by the shadow of his hood, but she could see the intensity in his eyes, the almost desperate determination. He didn't make a move to attack. Instead, he raised his hands slowly, a gesture of surrender that felt profoundly out of place. "Detective Reed," he acknowledged, his voice a low, calm baritone that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Always one step behind, but always persistent. I'll give you that, you." But Julian had no intention of being captured. This wasn't just a heist, it was a mission. As Evelyn took a cautious step forward, Julian revealed the true breadth of his capabilities. He wasn't just a master hacker, he was a ghost, a magician. With a blur of motion, he flung a small, high-frequency disruptor grenade. It didn't explode, but emitted a deafening sonic pulse that temporarily disoriented Evelyn and her team, disrupting their communications. In that split second of confusion, Julian vanished. He didn't run. He scaled a sheer server rack with parkour-like fluidity, disappearing into an impossibly small maintenance hatch in the ceiling. Evelyn, regaining her composure, ordered her team to secure the area, but she knew it was futile. Julian was gone, but he had left something behind. On the console he had been using, a series of complex data logs scrolled rapidly, too fast for human eyes to process. Evelyn, however, managed to capture a few crucial frames. These logs revealed not just stolen data, but evidence of Omnicorp's systemic financial fraud, involving shell companies, money laundering, and, most disturbingly, the systematic acquisition of distressed assets from vulnerable individuals and small businesses. Julian hadn't just been stealing, he had been exposing. His profound understanding of Omnicorp's labyrinthine systems implied a motive far deeper than mere profit. He wasn't a simple thief, he was a crusader, albeit a criminal one, on a mission for justice. Unbeknownst to Evelyn or Julian, their tense ballet had been observed. Sergeant Lena Hansen, Evelyn's pragmatic and observant colleague, had been monitoring the tactical feed from the command center. She saw Evelyn's unusually intense pursuit, her conflicted reactions as Julian's sophisticated methods unfolded. Lena, a veteran who had seen countless criminals, recognized a different quality in Julian's movements, a distinct lack of malice in his evasion. She had also noticed Evelyn's subtle, almost imperceptible hesitation when cornering him, a flicker of something beyond professional duty. Lena, ever the astute observer, began to sense a personal connection forming, a complex web of attraction and professional conflict developing between the detective and the elusive thief. her brow furrowed, a silent warning for Evelyn's emotional entanglement. However, a far more sinister observer had also been watching. Silas Thorne, the ruthless tech magnate, the true power behind Omnicorp and its illicit activities, had been monitoring Julian's recent high-profile targets with growing alarm. Thorne, a man whose ambition was matched only by his depravity, saw Julian not as a mere rogue thief, but as a dangerous loose end. Julian's precise targeting of Thorne's hidden financial conduits meant he was closer than anyone else had ever come to exposing Thorne's vast, meticulously constructed criminal empire. Thorne, from his opulent penthouse office overlooking the city, watched the live feed of Julian's infiltration, his face a mask of cold fury. He was not interested in capturing Julian. He wanted him silenced, permanently. As Julian attempted to extract the final, most incriminating piece of data, a master key to Thorne's global network of illicit transactions, Thorne's voice, cold and devoid of mercy, crackled through the secure communication channels to his security forces within Omnicorp. "Override all standard protocols," he commanded. "Activate lethal defense measures. I want the Phantom eliminated. No survivors. Make it look like a system malfunction." The building's defenses, designed for capture, suddenly turned deadly. Laser grids pulsed with a new, dangerous intensity. Automated turrets whirred to life, and emergency lockdown procedures initiated, trapping Julian within a collapsing digital and physical cage. Thorne's intent was clear: to silence Julian permanently, ensuring his own criminal network remained hidden beneath a pile of rubble and a lifeless body. Evelyn, still in the server room, saw the lights shift from cautionary yellow to menacing red. The air pressure changed, signaling the activation of deadly countermeasures. She understood instantly this wasn't just a security lockdown. It was a kill order. Julian was trapped. Her mind raced. Her duty was to apprehend Julian Vance, the criminal, but her moral compass, that deep, rigid sense of justice, recoiled at the thought of letting him be murdered by the very criminals she was sworn to stop. The law was clear: apprehend, not execute. She was a detective, not an executioner, and certainly not an accomplice to murder, even if the victim was a criminal. In that critical split second, with the whirring of activated turrets growing louder, Evelyn made a decision that would forever blur the lines of her duty. "Phantom," she yelled into the comms, hoping the disruptor had worn off. "They're going lethal. Get out. Now." She then moved, not to pursue Julian, but to disrupt Thorne's forces. She threw a flashbang grenade into a corridor where she saw Thorne's armed security approaching, disorienting them and buying Julian precious seconds. She then began manually overriding nearby access panels, risking exposure and even a charge of obstruction of justice, but creating alternate escape routes for Julian, paths that would lead him away from the most lethal traps. It was an unspoken alliance, forged in the crucible of impending doom. Evelyn, the embodiment of law, and Julian, the master criminal, were momentarily united against a common, truly evil enemy. As Julian, now aware of the lethal threat, navigated the treacherous paths Evelyn was opening for him, he sent a brief encrypted message to her comms. "Thank you. Meet me at the old shipping yard. Pier 7. Midnight. Alone." The message was both a challenge and a plea. The true antagonist, Silas Thorne, had been revealed, far more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. And Evelyn's world, once so ordered, had been irrevocably fractured by a choice that placed her squarely between duty and an unforeseen, undeniable connection. The midnight meeting at Pier 7 of the old shipping yard was shrouded in a dense fog that clung to the industrial structures, obscuring the city lights. Evelyn arrived first. Her police cruiser parked several blocks away, her movements swift and silent like a predator. The air was heavy with the scent of salt, decaying wood, and distant diesel fumes. The rhythmic creak of chains and the groan of rusty metal from unseen ships intensified the isolation. She checked her weapon, a Glock 19, its cold weight familiar in her hand. but her mind was elsewhere, wrestling with the ethical tightrope she was walking. Her uniform, usually a symbol of unwavering authority, felt suddenly heavy, a burden of conflicting loyalties. Julian Vance, the Phantom, materialized from the swirling mist, a figure as elusive as his reputation. He moved with an almost unnatural stealth, his dark clothes blending into the shadows of the containers. He was unarmed, his hands visible, a gesture of uneasy truce. His eyes, now unobscured by a hood, were a striking shade of gray, intense and intelligent, meeting hers with a blend of defiance and a vulnerability that surprised her. "Detective Reed," he said, his voice softer than she'd expected, a calm counterpoint to the chaotic night. "Thanks for coming. And for... back there." Evelyn kept her pistol steady, but her voice held no accusation. "You nearly got yourself killed. Phantom. And you endangered my team." "I don't hurt anyone, Detective. You know that. My targets are... different. And Omnicorp isn't just a corporation. It's a front for Silas Thorne. He's the real threat. The man behind the curtain." Julian's voice was laced with a palpable hatred when he spoke Thorne's name. He explained, with a chilling calmness, how Thorne had orchestrated the collapse of his family's tech startup years ago, framing his parents for corporate espionage, ultimately leading to their ruin and his own orphaned existence. His heists were an elaborate, albeit misguided, attempt to gather the irrefutable evidence needed to dismantle Thorne's vast, hidden criminal empire, a solo mission for justice that had consumed his life. His true talent, he revealed, was not just hacking, but a profound genius in cybersecurity, a strategic mind capable of outthinking the most complex systems. He had been using his skills for what he perceived as righteous retribution, a desperate act of vengeance. Evelyn listened, her expression unreadable. The story, tragic and compelling, resonated with a part of her that understood the pursuit of justice, even when it bent the rules. The layers of her rigid morality began to peel away, revealing a more nuanced landscape. The children's fund theft, she now realized, was a desperate measure, a last resort to gain the attention he needed, and, potentially, to expose Thorne's greater network. He hadn't just stolen the money, he had orchestrated a complex digital trail that, if followed correctly, would have led straight back to Thorne's money laundering operations. Their conversation, initially cautious, grew into an intense exchange. They debated the nature of justice, the flaws in the system, and the insidious reach of men like Thorne. Evelyn, the staunch upholder of the law, found herself listening to a criminal who spoke of principles that, in a twisted way, aligned with her own. Julian, the Phantom, saw in Evelyn a rare blend of integrity and understanding that he hadn't encountered in years. The air between them crackled, not with animosity, but with a strange, burgeoning understanding. Their uneasy truce, however, was shattered by a sudden, chilling realization. Julian's watch, a custom-built device that doubled as a high-tech scanner, began to pulse red. "Thorne," he whispered, his eyes wide. "He's not just targeting my data. He's initiating a full-scale digital attack, a citywide blackout, financial systems, power grid, emergency services. He's planning to extract billions in the ensuing chaos. It's a cover-up, a scorched earth policy to erase all traces of his empire." The arena for this ultimate test wasn't a specific building or a virtual battlefield. It was the very fabric of the city's order, its lifeblood, its infrastructure. Thorne was striking at the heart of the law Evelyn upheld, threatening to plunge millions into darkness and despair. Julian, now fully aware of Thorne's true maliciousness, felt a profound regret for his part in inadvertently provoking such a catastrophe. He had been a chess piece in Thorne's larger, far more sinister game, an unwilling participant in chaos, a puppet on Thorne's strings, forced to assist with certain backdoors and vulnerabilities he had unwittingly discovered during his own investigations. Evelyn felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. This wasn't a heist. It was an act of domestic terrorism. The stakes had been raised exponentially. Her immediate thought was to call it in, to mobilize every resource the department had. But then, a wave of familiar resistance washed over her. She was already isolated. Her superiors, especially Captain Davies, had grown increasingly suspicious of her unorthodox methods. Her unwavering focus on Julian, and her growing, almost obsessive belief that Julian was being coerced or had a deeper, less criminal motive. Davies, a man of rigid adherence to protocol and procedure, saw Evelyn's unconventional approach as a dangerous deviation from police ethics. He believed she was compromising her duty for a personal obsession, perhaps even being manipulated by the Phantom. When Evelyn tried to explain Thorne's vast network and his true intentions, her words were met with skepticism, thinly veiled accusations of emotional compromise, and stern warnings to stay within departmental guidelines. "Reed," Davies had said just that morning, his voice heavy with disapproval, "your focus on this Phantom is becoming an issue. Stick to the evidence. Not these wild theories about shadowy magnates. You're a detective, not a conspiracy theorist." Evelyn was effectively operating on her own, a solitary figure fighting not only the escalating criminal underworld, but also the rigid bureaucracy of her own department. Her attempts to explain Thorne's involvement were met with skepticism and warnings to return to standard procedure. She was cut off, isolated, a lone wolf howling at a moon that refused to listen. Sergeant Lena Hansen was her only quiet ally. Lena, observing Evelyn's increasing desperation and the mounting evidence, had begun to see the cracks in the official narrative. She couldn't openly defy Captain Davies, but she offered Evelyn invaluable, unofficial support, leaked intel, crucial background checks, and a listening ear that didn't judge. Just, "Be careful, Ev," Lena had warned her, her voice low. "Don't get yourself hung out to dry." Julian's watch, now displaying a terrifying countdown, confirmed the time pressure. "The first phase hits in 2 hours," he said, his voice grim. "Localized power outages, communication blackouts. Within 48 hours, the entire city will be dark, and billions will be gone." Every tick of the digital clock was a hammer blow, driving home the urgency. The fate of millions, the stability of the city, depended on them. A chilling ticker began to appear on some major news outlets, already broadcasting emergency alerts about potential system failures, creating a wave of public panic that was already spreading through the city's digital arteries. There was no time to lose, no room for error. The ultimate test had begun, and Evelyn, the detective, found herself irrevocably bound to Julian, the criminal, in a desperate race against the clock, fighting an enemy far more insidious than either of them had ever imagined. The city's pulse began to falter. The 2-hour countdown Julian's watch had displayed evaporated into reality as localized power outages flickered across the distant skyline. Blocks of lights winked out, plunging neighborhoods into an unsettling darkness. The police radio, usually a cacophony of routine calls, now crackled with escalating reports of traffic light failures, disrupted communication networks, and the first whispers of widespread panic. Evelyn felt the weight of it all, a crushing responsibility that threatened to buckle her under. They were in a race against an invisible enemy, and the city itself was the playing field, a sprawling, vulnerable target. Evelyn and Julian were holed up in a derelict, abandoned warehouse, a forgotten relic of the city's industrial past that Julian had used as a temporary hideout. It was a cavernous space, filled with the ghosts of forgotten machinery and the pervasive scent of rust and dust. Julian had set up a makeshift command center amidst the grime, a constellation of laptops, monitors, and blinking network devices. His fingers, a blur of motion, danced across the keyboards, trying to navigate Thorne's insidious digital attack, searching for the elusive kill switch, the hidden vulnerability within Thorne's sophisticated architecture. Evelyn stood beside him, her pistol never far, her eyes scanning the flickering screens, trying to comprehend the labyrinthine complexity of the cyber war unfolding before them. "He's anticipating our moves," Julian muttered, his voice tight with frustration, the usual calm precision replaced by a desperate urgency. He slammed his fist lightly on the table. "Every time I try to reroute the power grid's access protocols, he's already there. It's like he's got a ghost in my machine, too." His brow furrowed in concentration, a vein throbbing faintly on his temple. Suddenly, a series of alarms blared from one of Julian's monitors. A complex network diagram, showing the city's power grid, turned a menacing red in a critical junction. "He's targeting the primary substation in the downtown core," Julian exclaimed, his voice rising. "It's a physical attack, too, not just digital. A surge will cripple the entire central district." Evelyn's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about data anymore. It was about lives. Thousands would be without power. Hospitals would lose critical systems. Emergency services would be overwhelmed. And then, a new notification flashed on Julian's screen, an encrypted message from an unknown source. Julian quickly decrypted it. His eyes widened in horror. "Evelyn, he's sent a team to the substation. They're armed, and they have orders to plant explosives, to ensure a complete, irreversible collapse." Evelyn's heart leaped into her throat. This was a physical threat, directly aimed at maximizing chaos and covering Thorne's tracks. Her duty, her instinct, screamed at her to act. "I have to go," she said, already moving towards the door, checking her gear. "I can intercept them." "No." Julian spun around, his hand grabbing her arm. His eyes were wide with a mix of fear and desperation. "Evelyn, it's a trap. Thorne knows you're operating solo. He knows you're the one pursuing him. This isn't just about the substation. He's anticipating you. It's a physical threat designed to eliminate you." As if on cue, an alert popped up on his screen, a live feed from a hidden camera near the substation, showing a dark van pulling up, heavily armed men emerging. The feed then flickered, revealing Thorne's emblem on one of the men's vests. "He wants you out of the picture. He's going to make it look like a police confrontation gone wrong, a hero tragically killed in the line of duty, while he executes the rest of his plan." Evelyn froze. Julian was right. Thorne was a master manipulator, always thinking 10 steps ahead. This was a trap designed specifically for her, using the city's peril as bait. She could see the grim reality in Julian's eyes, the stark vulnerability in his face. It was in that moment, seeing the genuine fear for her in his eyes, that Julian's guarded past began to unravel further. "My family," Julian began, his voice hoarse, the words tumbling out in a torrent. "My parents weren't just framed by Thorne. They tried to expose him. They had almost everything. But Thorne found out. He didn't just ruin them financially. He used their own security vulnerabilities against them. He manipulated the stock market, drained their accounts, and then planted false evidence. He framed them for treason, and they were killed, trying to escape. I was just a kid. I saw it all. I saw what he was capable of. They always told me to see the patterns, to find the truth hidden in the data. My heists, they were never about the money. They were about finding proof. The Children's Fund was desperate. It was a last resort to get the attention needed to expose Thorne's true network. A network so vast, so deeply embedded. No one would believe me." His voice cracked, revealing a pain that went far beyond mere criminal intent. His real talent, his profound genius in cybersecurity and strategic planning, was not a tool for crime, but a weapon forged in the crucible of personal tragedy, used for what he perceived as righteous retribution. Evelyn looked at him, her heart aching with a mixture of understanding and sorrow. The layers of the phantom peeled away, revealing a traumatized, brilliant orphan who had dedicated his life to a vigilante's quest for justice, a quest that had, paradoxically, placed him on the wrong side of the law. The lines between criminal and victim, hero and villain, blurred almost to the point of disappearing. "We have to stop him," Julian declared, his eyes burning with renewed resolve, wiping away the tears. "Not just for my family, but for everyone. For the city." He turned back to his monitors, his fingers flying with renewed purpose. "If I can override his system here, I can create a momentary vulnerability, a backdoor into his central server. But it'll be a narrow window, and he'll know. He'll send everything he has at us. You'll have to hold them off. Physically." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "I can do that," she said, her voice firm, resolute. Her tactical mind, honed by years of training, immediately began to assess the warehouse, identifying choke points, defensive positions, potential escape routes. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal. It was about avenging Julian's family, about protecting the city, and about a shared fight for justice against a truly heinous enemy. The rigid adherence to protocol, the doubts from Captain Davies, they faded into insignificance. All that mattered was stopping Thorne. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Captain Davies was receiving conflicting reports. The localized blackouts were indeed happening, just as Evelyn had warned. Yet, the official channels were dead ends, manipulated by Thorne's cyber attack. Sergeant Lena Hansen, however, was feeding Davies scraps of information. Anonymous tips about Thorne's known criminal associates. Strange digital footprints that seemed to point away from the Phantom and towards a larger, more organized conspiracy. Davies, a man who valued order above all else, was forced to confront the chaos. He saw Evelyn's desperate efforts through brief, garbled comms. And, more importantly, he saw the growing public panic. A flicker of doubt in his rigid judgments began to manifest, a crack in his staunch adherence to protocol. He still didn't fully understand, but he knew one thing: Evelyn Reed, however unconventional, got results. With Julian's desperate, crucial assistance and Evelyn's tactical acumen, they prepared for the final, brutal confrontation. The dusty warehouse, once a symbol of forgotten industry, was now their last stand, their crucible. The city outside groaned under the weight of Thorne's assault, but inside, an impossible alliance, fueled by shared purpose and a burgeoning, unspoken love, was ready to fight back. The abandoned warehouse, a forgotten shell of industry, became the crucible for the city's fate. The air thrummed with the desperate energy of two unlikely allies. Outside, the city pulsed with fear, its lights flickering, its vital signs slowly dimming under Thorne's relentless digital assault. News channels, broadcasting through emergency systems, showed increasing chaos, stranded commuters, hospitals switching to backup generators, the first signs of public unrest. Captain Davies, at headquarters, was a maelstrom of conflicting orders and fragmented intelligence, his rigid adherence to protocol crumbling under the weight of an unprecedented crisis. Lena Hansen, however, was systematically compiling the anonymous data she'd received, her quiet efficiency beginning to form a coherent picture that, alarmingly, pointed to Thorne. "He's moved the control center," Julian announced, his voice tight, eyes glued to a complex digital map on one of his screens. "His central server farm. It's beneath Omnicorp Tower, in a reinforced bunker. He's funneling all the stolen funds there, simultaneously wiping every trace of his network as a final scorched earth maneuver. It's also the control hub for the citywide blackout and the explosives. If we don't stop him there, it's over. For everything." The revelation of Thorne's central server farm, the heart of his digital empire, was both a target and a trap. It was the symbolic arena for their ultimate confrontation, the place where all lines converged. Evelyn nodded, her face grim. "All right. Physical breach. You get us in. Julian. Then you focus on stopping the wipe and the detonation. I'll handle Thorne's security." Her voice was steady, calm, betraying none of the internal turmoil. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal, but it was their only chance. Their journey to Omnicorp Tower was a silent, tense ballet through the darkening, chaotic city. Evelyn drove with a controlled recklessness, weaving through stalled traffic and avoiding the scattered police barricades. Julian, beside her, was a whirlwind of frantic keyboard strokes, hacking into the city's traffic cameras, rerouting their path, and disabling alarms. Their synergy was undeniable, two halves of an impossible whole, working in perfect, unspoken concert. They breached Omnicorp Tower's outer defenses in a flurry of precision. Evelyn, with her tactical expertise, disarmed the ground-level motion sensors, her movements fluid and silent. Julian, a ghost in the machine, bypassed the main entrance's biometric locks, the heavy doors hissing open with a barely audible sigh. Inside, the building was a silent, steel and glass labyrinth, normally bustling, now eerily deserted. Only the low hum of the emergency power and the distant thrum of Thorne's network hinted at the terror brewing within. They descended into the reinforced bunker beneath the tower, a hidden fortress of concrete and steel, the air growing colder, heavier. The server farm was a vast, cavernous space, rows upon rows of humming servers stretching into the dim distance, bathed in the sickly green glow of indicator lights. This was Thorne's inner sanctum. Armed guards, Thorne's elite personal security, emerged from the shadows. "I'll cover you," Evelyn yelled, her voice echoing. She drew her pistol, moving with practiced efficiency, taking cover behind a row of server racks. Her shots were precise, non-lethal, targeting the guards' limbs, disarming them without killing. She moved like a phantom herself, a blur of tactical maneuvers, her punches and kicks connecting with devastating precision. She was fighting for her city, for Julian, for the broken sense of justice that now burned within her. Julian, meanwhile, had dropped to a console, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard, lines of code streaming across the display. He was the digital architect, weaving through Thorne's counterattacks, dismantling firewalls, his mind a step ahead of the most complex algorithms Thorne could throw at him. "He's throwing everything at me," Julian grunted, sweat beading on his forehead. "His system is highly self-aware. It's learning my moves." He was trying to stop the complete data wipe Thorne had initiated, a final act of digital annihilation meant to erase his crimes. The battle raged. Evelyn engaged a particularly large guard, her boxing training kicking in. She ducked under a wide swing, delivered a sharp jab to his midsection, followed by a swift kick to the knee, bringing him down. As she secured him, a series of ominous beeps echoed through the server farm. Evelyn, the failsafe. "He's activating the explosives," Julian yelled, his voice laced with pure terror. A new countdown appeared on his screen, a terrifying red timer. 60 seconds. And then, Silas Thorne himself emerged from a darkened alcove, a menacing figure in an expensive suit, holding a compact, high-tech weapon. His face was a mask of cold fury, his eyes blazing with a desperate, murderous intent. He raised his weapon, aiming it not at Julian, but at Evelyn. "You meddling bitch!" Thorne snarled, his voice distorted by rage. "You think you can stop me, I'll erase you, just like I'm erasing everything else." Breathless. Moment. Evelyn lunged, narrowly avoiding Thorne's first shot. They engaged in a brutal, desperate hand-to-hand combat, a clash of primal fury. Thorne, though unrefined, was powerful, driven by a cornered animal's desperation. Evelyn used her disciplined boxing techniques, dodging, weaving, striking with calculated precision, but he was strong, and she was already exhausted. She landed a solid blow to his jaw, staggering him, but he recovered with a roar, throwing her against a server rack. The impact sent a searing pain through her shoulder. She fell, momentarily stunned, her vision blurring. Thorne raised his weapon, a cruel smile twisting his lips, ready to deliver the killing blow. Simultaneously, Julian's monitor flashed, wipe initiated, Detonation sequence active. The red countdown flashed 10 seconds. All hope seemed lost. Julian, seeing Evelyn in mortal danger and the city on the brink of chaos, made a desperate, final surge. He had to save Evelyn. He had to save the city. He momentarily left Evelyn to face Thorne alone, his fingers a blur, racing against the impending destruction, a single tear escaping his eye as he thought he might be too late for Evelyn. In a breathtaking, synchronized move, born of their impossible synergy, Julian managed to override Thorne's wipe and detonation with literally seconds to spare. A green system-secure message flashed, replacing the red countdown. Simultaneously, Evelyn, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and a primal will to survive, twisted, using the server rack as leverage. She kicked out, catching Thorne's arm, sending his weapon clattering to the floor. Before he could recover, she disarmed him with a swift, practiced move, pinning him against the rack, her knee to his chest, her eyes blazing with cold fire. Just as Evelyn subdued Thorne, the heavy blast doors to the bunker burst open. Alarms blared, and the piercing wail of police sirens filled the air. Sergeant Lena Hansen, her face grim but resolute, led a contingent of armed officers into the server farm. Behind her, Captain Davies, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning realization, followed with more uniformed officers. They froze, witnessing the scene. Evelyn, bruised but victorious, pinning Silas Thorne, the city's most elusive criminal mastermind, while Julian Vance, the notorious Phantom, sat at a console, his fingers still hovering over the controls of the system he had just saved. The flickering screens around Julian displayed irrefutable evidence Thorne's vast, hidden wealth, his meticulously crafted plans for mass chaos, and the full extent of the devastating digital attack Julian had just thwarted. All the data Julian had stolen had been Thorne's dirty laundry, now broadcast for all to see. The media, who had been clamoring at the perimeter of Omnicorp Tower, now stormed the building, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. The dramatic scene, the police officer and the criminal, side by side, united against true evil, was captured live and broadcast worldwide. The public, who had feared the Phantom, now saw Julian Vance not as a criminal, but as a complex, reluctant hero, a victim of Thorne's schemes who had, paradoxically, saved them. Evelyn's unconventional methods, her unwavering belief in Julian's deeper motivations, her fight against the skepticism of her own department, were all fully vindicated. Her colleagues, who had doubted her, were stunned into silence, their faces shifting from disbelief to awe and profound respect. The indelible image of the police officer and the criminal, bathed in the flashing lights of emergency services, their combined efforts saving a city, reshaped public perception of justice forever. Their bond, forged in fire and chaos, was undeniable, etched into the fabric of the city's history. 5 years later, Silverwood, once a forgotten town clinging to the vestiges of its past, had undergone a remarkable transformation. It was no longer just a dot on the map. It had blossomed into a vibrant cultural and scientific hub, its existence inextricably linked to the extraordinary archaeological site nestled on what was once Elias Thorne's struggling farm. The ancient chambers, now meticulously preserved and subtly illuminated, drew scholars, tourists, and curious minds from across the globe, eager to witness the marvel that lay beneath the earth. Elias Thorne, the quiet, burdened farmer, was now a renowned figure in his field, a respected scholar whose work commanded international attention. He oversaw a dedicated team of archaeologists, geologists, and quantum physicists, all working in unison to unlock the profound secrets of Eridor. His days were filled with purpose, intellectual stimulation, and the quiet satisfaction of a life truly lived. The financial woes that had once consumed him were a distant memory, replaced by the profound richness of discovery and contribution. His inherent introversion had matured into a quiet confidence, allowing him to lead with wisdom rather than bluster. Elias, deeply aware of the pivotal role played by unconventional intuition and overlooked potential, had established the Eridor Discovery Foundation. This university program, generously funded by grants and private donations, specifically aimed to fund young, aspiring archaeologists from disadvantaged backgrounds, particularly those who might be overlooked due to unconventional thinking or quiet, observant personalities. He often lectured to these young minds, emphasizing that the greatest discoveries often come from listening to the whispers of the earth and the intuition of creatures, rather than just conventional academic dogma. In every official account of the Eridor site, every public presentation, and every scholarly paper, Digby's crucial role was acknowledged, honoring the animal's unwavering intuition as much as human intellect. Digby, now a venerable elder dog with a distinguished silver muzzle, was celebrated as a local legend in Silverwood, often seen napping contentedly near the site's visitor center, his presence a comforting reminder of the miracle that had begun with him. The story culminates on a crisp autumn evening, 5 years after the light burst forth. Elias stood at the entrance of the now beautifully preserved and subtly illuminated ancient chambers. The intricate carvings on the stone glowed with a soft, inviting light, hinting at the vast knowledge within. He looked out over the thriving town of Silverwood, its new research facilities, its bustling cafes, its vibrant community. It was a testament to how one unexpected discovery could ignite a future. Digby, older but still vibrant, sat faithfully by his side, his golden eyes gazing out at the horizon. A silent, contented guardian. A gentle golden light. The same ethereal glow that had saved Elias's home, emanated from the depths of the chambers. It was a constant, comforting beacon that symbolized the unearthed knowledge, the renewed hope for the town, and the unbreakable, extraordinary bond between a man and his dog, a light that had not only changed their lives, but had illuminated a path of wonder and discovery for future generations. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.